So in this today we will study about meningitis. Meninges means the layers of tissues that separate the skull and the brain. Okay, they are meninges are the three protective layers which separates the skull and the brain. Usually these meninges are present around the brain and the spinal cord. That is the meninges. The itis as it is, it's an inflammation. Okay, especially here in meningitis, it is inflammation especially of two inner layers that are called as leptomeninges. Okay, so we'll just see the layers of brain, how it is made up of. Okay, the outermost layer of the brain is called as dura mater, and the next layer, middle layer, that's called as the arachnoid matter. This is the arachnoid matter, and the innermost layer is called as the pia mater, that is the DAP. Okay, dura mater, arachnoid matter, and the pia matter. Okay, so this arachnoid matter and pia matter, in between that the layer that is present is called as the subarachnoid space. Okay, this is the subarachnoid space which is there in between the arachnoid space and the pia mater. Okay, so this subarachnoid space contains the cerebrospinal fluid. So cerebrospinal fluid which is present in the subarachnoid space is a watery liquid. It specially cushions the brain and the spinal cord for any impacts. Okay, and it also bathes them with the nutrients as it has got the nutrients as well. Okay, this is the basic structure of the brain which has got the meninges. Okay, especially this cerebrospinal fluid, usually in 1 cubic milliliter of cerebrospinal fluid, there are only 5 white blood cells present. Okay, in a larger quantity, if you speak about, that is in 1 deciliter of cerebrospinal fluid, you will find around 70% of lymphocytes, 30% of monocytes, and only few polymorphonuclear cells, like for example neutrophils, you will find very few. Okay, and also along with these lymphocytes, monocytes, and neutrophils, along with these white blood cells, immune cells, you also find proteins around 15 to 50 mg, and you will find glucose around 45 to 100 mg, that is around 2/3 of the glucose found in the same volume of blood, like. Okay, and then it is held under some pressure, maybe less than 200 mm water or 15 mm of mercury. Okay, so our body has got a total volume of CSF that is present in our body is around 150 ml. Okay, it is regularly replenished by the body, as our body usually daily produces 500 ml of cerebrospinal fluid, but out of 500 ml, only 150 ml is present continuously in the body. So excess of 500 minus 150, that's excess 350 ml of cerebrospinal fluid is again reabsorbed by the blood. Okay, so that is the quantity of cerebrospinal fluid which is present regular rays, that is 150 ml. Okay, and then we've got a special blood vessels that supply blood to the brain. Okay, so the blood vessels of the cerebrospinal fluid that is contained with, it has got a special barrier that's called as a blood-brain barrier. The blood vessels that supply blood to the brain specially are made up with the tightly packed endothelial cells. Okay, these are the endothelial cells which line the blood vessels usually anywhere. So if they are in the other than brain, if they are present, they are loosely connected, but here in the brain the endothelial cells are so tightly connected that they won't permit most of the things to pass through them. So only certain molecules are allowed to pass through this blood-brain barrier. In turn, that's called as a blood-brain barrier, which allows very few molecules to pass through them. So meningitis, that is especially the inflammation of the leptomeninges that we have discussed earlier, that the inner 2 layers are called as the leptomeninges, that is the arachnoid layer and the pia mater. Those two together are the leptomeninges. So any inflammation of these 2 layers, that is of the leptomeninges, is called the meningitis. So any inflammation of the whole brain is called as the encephalitis. So if it is an inflammation in leptomeninges and brain both together, that's called as the meningoencephalitis. So what are the triggers that causes the inflammation in the brain or the cerebrospinal fluid inflammation or the meninges inflammation? Some triggers are the important one or the most common one is the autoimmune diseases, like our body start attacking itself. Autoimmune reaction, antibody antigen reaction takes place, especially examples like lupus erythematosus. And then there may be an adverse reaction to any medication that is injected into the body through the intrathecal therapy, that is directly any medicine that is injected directly into the cerebrospinal fluid, that may cause some adverse reaction which may cause the inflammation of the meninges. And most important and the most common thing that happens in inflammation or the meningitis is the due to the infection. Okay, especially meningitis is usually caused by either viral or a bacterial or the fungal infections. Okay, so the most common infection that cause the meningitis are the Neisseria meningitis and herpes simplex bacteria. Okay, so how do these pathogens or the infections that spread into the brain? Okay, so the one is a direct spread of the pathogen. Directly the pathogen has entered the brain or the cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, this is the skull or the spinal column. The pathogen is directly invaded into the different layers of the brain, and then it enters into the cerebrospinal fluid. That is one thing that happens in the direct spread. That is either through overlying the skin or up through the nose, or maybe due to the anatomical defects, congenital defects like spina bifida or acquired skull fracture. During, I mean, if it is a congenital, I mean, spina bifida, then there will be a defect, then the pathogen directly enter into the cerebrospinal fluid. If there is a skull fracture, or if there is any leakage of the cerebrospinal fluid in the synovial, that allows the pathogen to enter into the cerebrospinal fluid, which then causes the inflammation. Okay, that is one thing, that either it is directly entered into the cerebrospinal fluid. Other method of spreading of this is that hematogenous spread, that is through the blood. Okay, so these are the blood vessels that are carrying blood to the brain and the spinal cord. So if there is any these pathogens, if they have got a special affinity for the receptors that are present on the blood vessels that are carrying blood to the brain, especially through that the pathogens may enter the cerebrospinal fluid, like by binding through the surface receptors. Okay, the surface receptors which are present on the blood vessels of the especially of the brain and the spinal cord. And these pathogens may enter if there is a damage in any area of the damage in the blood vessels, or else if there is any vulnerable spots like choroid plexuses. So these are the spots identified by the pathogens. Through those vulnerable spots, they may enter the blood-brain barrier, or they may cross the blood-brain barrier and enter into the cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, so these pathogens will be capable of penetrating the blood-brain barrier or the endothelial cells of the blood-brain barrier, and once they enter into the cerebrospinal fluid, they'll start multiplying here. Okay, so these are the pathogens which are entered through the blood and they started multiplying here. Once these pathogens started multiplying in the cerebrospinal fluid, our body identifies them as a foreign particle and start producing more white blood. So the white blood cells which are already present, that we discussed, around 5 in microliter will be present. So those white blood cells will release cytokines. Okay, so these cytokines in turn will recruit more and more amount of white blood cells to that area to fight these foreign particles or the pathogens. Okay, so this newly recruited white blood cells will attract more fluid to that area, and then they'll start causing the destruction. As they try to control the infection, they start causing the inflammation and the destruction, which in turn again will increase the intracranial pressure here. Okay, so usually in meningitis, that is in a normal condition, we discussed that 1 microliter of cerebrospinal fluid has got only 5 WBCs. So any number or more than 5 number of WBCs indicates that it is a meningitis. Okay, so more than 5 WBCs is meningitis. But like especially in bacterial infection, there are more than 100 WBCs per microliter, and more than 90% of neutrophils especially. Okay, and then the in viral infection, if it is a inflammation caused by the virus, okay, viral infection, then usually you observe 10 to 1000 WBCs per microliter, and more than 50% of lymphocytes are present, and less than 20% of PMNs are present, okay, neutrophils for example. And in fungal infection, usually 10 to 500 WBCs per microliter you find, and more than 50% of lymphocytes, no PMNs or the neutrophils, okay. And in tuberculosis meningitis, usually there are 50 to 500 WBCs per microliter, and more than 80% of lymphocytes. So in fungal and tuberculosis meningitis, you only find the core number of lymphocytes, okay. They are the anti-inflammatory cells in fungal and tuberculosis meningitis, whereas in bacterial and viral meningitis, other than lymphocytes, even the neutrophils play. In bacterial infection or the inflammation, PMNs or the neutrophils are the important anti-inflammatory cells here, okay, which causes. Then, as we discussed earlier, that especially in meningitis, there will be a increased intracranial pressure. Okay, the pressure usually should be is maintained less than 200 mm of water. Okay, so during the inflammation of the meninges, it causes the pressure to increase. That is more than 200 mm of water, and then there will be a glucose concentration variation also. That as we discussed earlier, that is around 45 to 100. Is present glucose concentration in CSF, so that will be less than 2/3 of the blood glucose in during meningitis. And also there will be an increased level of proteins. Okay, so the protein normal level is 15 to 50 mg per deciliter, whereas in meningitis it will be increased more than 50 mg per deciliter. Okay, and the bacteria and the viruses usually cause the acute meningitis, whereas the fungi causes the chronic meningitis. Okay, some of the bacteria which causes these meningitis, we'll just name few. Especially in newborns, the bacteria which are responsible to cause the meningitis are the group of Bacillus streptococci and Escherichia E. coli, and then Listeria monocytogenes. These are the few bacteria which causes the meningitis in newborns. Okay, and in children and teens, usually the Neisseria meningitis and Streptococcus pneumonia are the one. And in adults and in elderly, there are Streptococcus pneumonia and Listeria monocytogenes. These are the bacteria which causes the meningitis. Okay, and other than that, tick-borne or the Borrelia burgdorferi, which is a cause for the Lyme disease. These are the bacteria which causes the meningitis. Now we'll just see what viruses that cause meningitis. Usually, the most common viruses that cause the meningitis are the enteroviruses, especially in enterovirus, Coxsackie virus, herb simplex virus, or the HIV. Okay, human immunodeficiency viruses. So these are the common viruses which may cause the meningitis. Other than this, the less common viruses to name: mumps and varicella zoster and lymphocytic choriomeningitis. These are the few less common viruses which are responsible for causing the meningitis. Okay. To some of the fungi that may cause this meningitis are the mainly effective these fungal infection usually occurs when the body is immunocompromised. Okay, immunity is suppressed. In those conditions only, usually this fungi will attack the brain or the spinal cord, which causes the meningitis. So to name some of them is the Cryptococcus genuis and Coccidioides genuis. Okay, and then the other ones like tubercular meningitis in Mycobacterium tuberculosis, and then the parasitic meningitis, usually the P. falciparum, which is the main reason for causing the malaria. So these are the few fungal. These two are the fungi. And tubercular meningitis, where the tuberculosis is caused due to the Mycobacterium tuberculosis, that may cause when it crosses the blood-brain barrier, and that may cause the meningitis there. And the parasitic meningitis, where the malarial parasite may cause the meningitis when it crosses the blood-brain barrier. Okay. Let's see what are the symptoms that are caused due to this meningitis. Okay, so there is a classic triad of symptoms. The most important symptoms are the headache, fever, and the neutral rigidity. Neutral rigidity, that is the stiffness of the neck. Okay, neutral rigidity, stiffness of the neck. That is, there is a sensation of discomfort or the soreness in the neck when you try to move your head. Okay, when you try to move your neck or head from one side to other side, you get a little discomfort or the soreness, that neutral rigidity, stiff neck it is caused as. And you can also observe the photophobia or the phonophobia, that is the scare to light and the sound. Okay, photophobia, there is a discomfort with bright lights, and the phonophobia, there's a discomfort with loud sounds. And then there is a meningoencephalitis, okay, which causes the altered mental status of a person, and then it may cause a seizures as well. Okay, this is all about the meningitis we have discussed here. Thank you.